All my life, they told me I'd never be anyone. They laughed at my dreams. Then one day, I got on stage, hit play on something I built in the dark, and the entire room froze. They called me worthless so often I started to believe it. Not in some dramatic, cinematic way, but the slow kind, the quiet erosion that creeps into your bones until you stop dreaming, stop trying, and start existing like a background prop in your own life. That was me, the kid who blended into the walls, the guy nobody expected anything from. My name is Jacob Miller, and for most of my life, that name meant nothing to anyone but me. My family never believed in me. Not once. I still remember my dad squinting at my sketchbook like it was trash. "You really think this'll get you anywhere?" he asked once. Not angry, just dismissive. That was worse. The absence of rage. The presence of indifference. Teachers? Same deal. One of them, Mr. Rankin, 8th grade history, told me flat out, "You don't focus. You don't care. You're not going anywhere if you keep this up." He said it in front of the whole class. I laughed it off like I didn't care. But I did. God, I did. The worst part was the friends, or the people I thought were friends. They laughed when I shared ideas, rolled their eyes. One time in high school, I mentioned wanting to design a game. Like, build the whole thing from scratch. Code, music, art, everything. This girl named Jessica laughed so hard she nearly fell out of her chair. "You? Build a game?" she said. "Maybe if it's a game about failing at life." Everyone laughed. I did too. That fake, nervous laugh you force when you are trying not to fall apart. I went home that night and cried under the sheets like a kid. I was 17. It never really stopped. Even when I grew up, moved out, got a job, I kept hearing them. Not with their mouths. With their silence. Their absence. No one ever asked how I was doing. No one ever checked in. Birthdays passed without calls. Accomplishments felt like trees falling in an empty forest. But I kept going. Quietly. Always quietly. At night, when the apartment was still and my cheap desk lamp buzzed like a broken speaker, I taught myself everything. Design, animation, programming, sound editing. I downloaded cracked versions of software because I could not afford the real ones. Watched tutorials on borrowed Wi-Fi. Built ugly things. Then slightly less ugly things. Then things that, if you squinted, looked kind of cool. I never shared any of it. Not because I was shy. Because I had learned not to expect applause. And yet, I kept going. I do not know why. Maybe spite. Maybe stubbornness. Maybe the belief that if I could make one thing, just one, that mattered, then maybe I mattered too. Then one day, something happened. An email. A reply to a submission I had sent off months ago, half as a joke, half as a Hail Mary. I had built a prototype for a game, a real one. Simple, but clean. I sent it to an indie showcase, fully expecting silence. Instead, they invited me to present. In person. On stage. And that was when everything began to change. I almost did not go. The moment I read that email, my stomach flipped. Not with joy. With panic. It felt like someone had shined a flashlight right into the cave I had been hiding in for years. I remember staring at my screen, rereading the invite over and over. "You've been selected to present at the Northside Indie Showcase in Chicago. We loved your submission. Please confirm your attendance by the 10th. I sat there, frozen. My first thought was, they made a mistake. My second was, what if I show up and make a fool of myself? I had not been on a stage since middle school choir, where my voice cracked during a Christmas solo, and some kid named Danny called me puberty boy for the next 3 years. That fear? It stuck. It lived in my chest, wrapped around my ribs like wires. But something in me stirred. That quiet part, the one that had kept going when nobody was watching, spoke up. "Do it," it said. Not loud. Not heroic. Just firm. So I booked the cheapest bus ticket I could find, packed up my laptop, and told my boss I needed a few days off. He did not ask why. No one ever asked me much of anything. The ride to Chicago was long and loud. Crying babies. A guy in the back muttering to himself. At one point, someone spilled grape soda, and it soaked through my backpack. My sketchbook smelled like sugar and regret. But I was too focused to care. I kept running through my demo, over and over. Polishing it. Tightening it. The whole thing was barely 15 minutes long, but it had taken me 3 years to make. When I got to the venue, I stood in the corner during the setup hour, watching the other presenters. They all seemed so confident. Crisp shirts, confident voices, business cards like tiny trophies. And there I was, in a wrinkled hoodie with old sneakers and calluses on my fingers from too many hours on a cheap mouse. The showcase hall filled quickly. People in lanyards, holding clipboards, sipping bad coffee. A few reporters. A couple guys from smaller studios. Even some YouTubers. I recognized one of them from a top 10 hidden indie gems video I had watched a dozen times. And then it hit me. I was going on stage. My palms were wet. My throat dry. My heart pounding like a jackhammer in my chest. And then I heard it. The voice of someone I had not seen in years. Jacob? That you? I turned. It was him. Danny. Puberty boy Danny. The same one who had laughed at me for years, now wearing a staff badge. Apparently, he worked for one of the partner companies helping run the event. He gave me a once-over and smirked. You presenting or just tagging along? I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. He chuckled and said, guess some things never change. And just like that, all the voices from my past came rushing back. Useless. Forgettable. Not good enough. The showcase host stepped up to the mic. Next up, a new creator with a unique vision and a story-driven concept that surprised even our veteran judges. Jacob Miller. I stood still for a second. Then I walked toward the stage. And for the first time in my life, I did not care who was watching. The stage was small. Just a raised platform with a single mic stand, a screen behind it, and enough space for a laptop and a shaky-legged presenter. The lights were bright, too bright, and the heat from them felt like it was peeling back my skin. As I walked up, I could feel the weight of every single eye on me. People were chewing on bagels, flipping through pamphlets, or pretending not to care, but I saw it. That look. The same one I had seen my whole life. Let's see if this guy screws up. I set up my laptop, clicked open the demo window, and tried to keep my hands from trembling. My voice, when it came, sounded like someone else's. My name is Jacob Miller, and this is Threadlight. It is a story-based puzzle game about silence, memory, and rebuilding yourself when the world sees nothing in you. I hit play. The trailer began. It was nothing flashy. No lasers. No loud music. Just soft piano, hand-drawn frames I had agonized over, and the voice of a narrator I had recorded in my closet with a sock-covered mic. The story followed a character who lived in the walls of a house, unseen, unheard, but slowly started changing the world around him without anyone realizing it. The room got quiet. Not bored quiet. Listening quiet. And then something happened. They leaned in. I could see it. Heads tilting forward. I squinting at the screen, trying to follow the subtle animations I had spent sleepless nights perfecting. One woman wiped her eye. A guy with a press badge scribbled something into a notebook. The YouTuber I had recognized earlier started filming with his phone. I kept going. Explained the mechanics. The choices. The layers of metaphor, how every puzzle represented a kind of emotional weight. Grief. Shame. Hope. The music, the visuals, even the colors, all tied to different chapters of self-worth. And then I said it. This game was not built in a studio. It was built in the cracks between shifts. At night, in silence. With no budget. No team. No cheerleaders. Just me and the quiet. I did not mean to say that last part. It just came out. Raw. Unfiltered. But no one laughed. No one smirked. They were silent. When the screen faded to black, I expected polite applause. Maybe a cough. A yawn. What I got was silence, then a long, slow, rising round of applause. Not loud. Not explosive. But real. And in that moment, I looked down into the crowd and I saw him. Danny. Mouth open. Expression blank. Not laughing. Just watching. And right next to him? My father. No idea how he got there. But he was standing by the side door, arms crossed, that same unreadable look he always wore when he was trying not to show emotion. I felt the breath catch in my throat. Because suddenly, everything I had buried started bubbling back up. All those nights when I cried into a pillow. All the times I almost gave up. All the days I told myself none of it mattered. But it did. And now, they knew it too. The clapping kept going. Not wild or theatrical, just steady. Meaningful. The kind that does not come out of pity or politeness. It felt like the room was giving me something I had never received before. Respect. But as I stood there, nodding slightly, hands gripping the sides of the podium to stop them from shaking, something strange happened. The sound of the applause started to fade, not because it was getting quieter, but because my mind drifted. Right back to the beginning. To the silence that came after I won the regional art contest in 6th grade. I had drawn this elaborate, swirling piece of a city being swallowed by vines. It took me 2 weeks. I skipped video games, barely slept. When I showed my mom the ribbon I won, she barely looked up from her phone. That's nice. What's for dinner? I was 11, and I never showed her anything again. Flash. My dad's voice in high school. I had just told him I was thinking about going into design. His laugh was short, dry. You'll end up flipping burgers. Nobody pays for doodles. I went to bed that night and erased every sketch I had taped to my wall. Flash. My cousin's graduation party. I brought my laptop, hoping to show off the first version of my game. I was nervous, but proud. I waited all evening. No one asked. When I finally brought it up, my uncle said, "That's cute, kid, but you need a real job." He patted me on the back and changed the subject to stocks. Flash. College. Or, more accurately, the lack of it. I never applied. Never had the grades. Never had the money. My guidance counselor asked what my plan was. I told her I wanted to make games. She blinked, smiled tightly, and said, "Maybe look into trade school." Flash. My 24th birthday. I spent it alone in a studio apartment with a broken heater, eating microwave ramen. My old friends were out getting drinks. I was debugging code that refused to work. I remember thinking, no one cares if you exist, man. Not even you. Flash. And then a snap, back to now. The applause was ending. People were looking at me, expecting me to speak again. But I could not. Not yet. I saw Danny still standing there, this weird, stunned expression on his face. The guy who once laughed every time I tripped over my words was now quiet. Frozen. I almost pitied him. Almost. Then my eyes went to the side door again. My father was gone. Just like that. Part of me wanted to chase him down. Ask him why he showed up. Ask him what he thought. Maybe even ask if he was proud. But I didn't. Because that was not the point. The point was, I did this. Without him. Without any of them. I stepped off the stage. My hands were still trembling, but my back was straight. For the first time in my life, I felt taller. And I had no idea what was coming next. Backstage was dim and quiet. Just a folding chair, a table with a half-eaten fruit tray, and some scattered extension cords. But I sat down like it was a throne. My heart was still thudding. My hands still buzzing. It felt like I had run a marathon barefoot, bruised but alive. A volunteer handed me a bottle of water. I nodded a thank you but could barely hold it. The moment was done, but it was not over. My phone vibrated nonstop. Texts, emails, notifications lighting up like fireworks. I scrolled, barely absorbing any of it. A few game blogs had tagged me. One post had already reached thousands of likes. Somebody called me the dark horse of the showcase. Another said my demo was the only one that made them cry. And then a text from an unknown number. Your mother showed me the clip. You did good, Jake. I froze. There was only one person who ever called me Jake. Uncle Ray. The one family member who had not laughed when I said I wanted to be a creator. He moved to Oregon when I was 12. We lost touch. But I never forgot the way he once told me, you got something the others don't. You feel things. Don't lose that. He had seen it. He had seen me. Then another text came in. This time, from a number I recognized. Danny. Hey man, didn't realize you were that Jacob Miller. Wild. Congrats. That Jacob Miller? I stared at those words for a long time. He had spent years making sure I felt like I was no one. And now he wanted to act like we were old buddies? Like none of it happened? I did not reply. Then, a third message buzzed in. Dad. Just 3 words. I was wrong. That one hit different. Not because it made anything okay, but because I never thought he would say it. I looked at the message and deleted it. It was not revenge. It was not anger. It was peace. Because I realized I did not need his apology. I had already made it. I made it on that stage, in every frame of that game, and every silent night I spent building a life no one believed I could. Outside, I heard the muffled voice of the host announcing the next speaker. The energy shifted. The crowd moved on. But something in me had changed forever. And what came next? Well, that part was still unwritten. I stepped out of the venue around noon. The wind off Lake Michigan hit me like a slap, sharp and honest. My breath turned white in the air. But I barely felt it. I had just finished packing up my laptop when a voice called out behind me. Jacob. I turned. And there she was. Jessica. High school Jessica. Aim laughing. Chair falling Jessica. The one who said, maybe if it's a game about failing at life. She looked older, of course, more polished, in heels and a blazer, holding a press pass that Red Event Media streamed low. I blinked, half expecting her to vanish. But she was real. "Hey," she said, almost too casual. "Crazy seeing you here." I did not say anything, just waited. She fiddled with the strap of her camera bag. "I saw your demo. Didn't realize it was yours at first." Of course she didn't. She gave a weak smile. "You really built all of that yourself?" I nodded. Jessica looked down at her shoes, then back at me. It was powerful. Like people were crying. That narrator line, about silence not being absence, gave me chills. I almost thanked her. Almost. But then she said it. The one sentence I had heard in a dozen flavors my whole life. "I guess I was wrong about you." I let the silence sit there between us. Because what could I say to that? "Thanks for your doubt? Appreciate the years of mockery?" She kept talking. "I mean, we were kids, you know? Back then, I didn't know anything. I didn't even know what I wanted to do. Still, I said nothing. Because suddenly, I realized the truth. I was not angry. Not anymore. Her words had lost their power long ago. The real battle had never been against her, or Danny, or my dad. It had always been against that voice inside me. The one that repeated their words long after they stopped saying them. And right now, that voice was quiet. "Anyway," she said, taking a step back, "I'm covering the event for my blog. If you ever want to do an interview, or whatever." She held out a card. I took it, because I was not that scared kid anymore. I was not the joke. I was not worthless. I was a creator. I watched her walk away, swallowed by the crowd of badge-wearing attendees and coffee-carrying assistants. Then I looked down at the card, and ripped it in half. Not out of spite. Out of peace. I did not need a story about her rediscovery of me. I already had my own. 2 days later, I was back home in my tiny apartment, peeling walls, flickering lights, heater that only worked when you kicked it just right. But it felt different now. Like the space itself had started to believe in me. I had barely unpacked when the first email came. Subject: interested in acquiring Threadlight. I thought it was spam at first. Some boilerplate message. But no, the sender was real. From a mid-sized indie publisher I had admired for years. They had put out titles I loved. Ones that had inspired me when I was deep in self-doubt. The message was short, but direct. "We were deeply moved by your presentation. The emotional depth, the world design, it all speaks to something rare. We're interested in acquiring the rights to Threadlight and bringing you on as lead developer under our label." I read it once, twice, 10 times. Then I just sat there, blinking at the screen like it might vanish. Me, the background kid, the loser, the one who got laughed at for wanting to build worlds. Now someone wanted to pay for that world. I called in sick to work that day, not because I was overwhelmed, though I was, but because I needed time to think. Part of me wanted to scream yes, immediately, but another part whispered, "Do not sell yourself short again." So I asked for a meeting, and we had one, on Zoom, the next morning. They were kind, smart, transparent about royalties and rights. Said I could keep full creative control. Said the industry needed more voices like mine. At one point, their lead executive, a guy named Marcus with thick glasses and a soft voice, paused and said, "We don't usually make these kinds of offers this fast. But your story, your game, it hit hard." He leaned in. "We see you, Jacob. And we believe the world should, too." I muted my mic for a second so I could breathe without them hearing me cry. Because no one had ever said that to me before. No one had ever said they saw me. I unmuted. My voice cracked. "I'm in." The contract came later that day. And just like that, I was no longer just a guy in a room building things in the dark. I was something else now. And as the ink dried on my signature, I realized. This was not the end of the story. It was only the beginning. I did not plan to go back. Not to my hometown. Not to the house where every hallway echoed with my failures. But when the publisher asked if I would be open to doing a local talk, part of a small-town creative series they sponsored, I paused. The venue? An old high school gym. My old high school. I laughed when I first saw it. The idea of me, standing up there, talking to students who sat in the same plastic chairs I once slouched in, trying not to cry after another failed test or another joke at my expense. But something about it pulled at me. Maybe I wanted closure. Maybe I wanted someone, anyone, to see what I had become. I agreed. The gym looked smaller than I remembered. Less intimidating. The bleachers creaked the same way. The basketball hoop still had that ripped net. I stood behind the podium and looked out at the crowd. Half kids, half teachers, a few parents. Familiar faces. Some older, some wider. And then, Back row, there they were. My old teachers. Mr. Rankin, the one who said I was going nowhere. Mrs. Holter, who once told me you can't turn games into a career. Be realistic. Even the principal was there, gray now, sitting with his arms folded like he was bracing for a fire drill. I started speaking. Not from a script. Not from notes. Just the truth. I told them about the silence. The shame. The late nights. The self-doubt. The years of building in the shadows. I told them about Threadlight. How I made it not to impress anyone, but to survive myself. The gym was quiet. Even the kids with phones lowered them. They listened. When I finished, there was a moment where no one moved. Then a girl in the front row raised her hand. Her voice was shaky. How did you know you were not worthless? That hit me harder than anything else. I looked right at her and said, I didn't. I just stopped asking the wrong people. The applause was slow at first, then steady, then loud. And right as I turned to leave the stage, I caught one last look at Mr. Rankin. He was standing, clapping, mouth closed, eyes shining. No words, and none were needed. 2 weeks after the school talk, I got a call I never expected. It was from a private number. Normally, I would have ignored it, but something in me said to pick up. A voice, clear, older, a little softer than I remembered, spoke. Jacob, it's your father. I sat down without realizing I was doing it. He started slow, like he was testing the words before saying them. I heard about the talk. A friend sent me a recording. I watched it. Twice. I waited. No anger. No breath holding. Just waited. I didn't know, he continued. I didn't know it had gotten that bad. Or maybe I did. And I didn't want to face it. He paused. I was hard on you. Too hard. Thought I was doing what dads are supposed to do. Pushing you to be strong. But I was just pushing you away. Still, I said nothing. I saw your game. Your interview. You're everywhere now. I've been reading about you. Hell, your face is in the papers. He gave the short, nervous laugh. I guess I wanted to say, I'm proud of you. There it was. The sentence I spent 20 years chasing like a dog after a car. And suddenly, I felt nothing. Not bitterness. Not joy. Just calm. I appreciate you saying that, I said finally. But I stopped needing it a long time ago. Silence. Then he said, I get it. I really do. He sounded smaller than I had ever heard him. Like the weight of everything he missed had finally settled on his shoulders. Then came the twist. I'm sick, Jacob. Not long. Doctors say months. Maybe less. It hit harder than I expected. I did not cry. I did not ask for details. I just listened. He said he did not want anything from me. No reunion. No forgiveness. I just wanted to hear your voice again. Even if just once. We sat in silence for a few more seconds. Then I said, you heard it. And hung up. I stared at the wall for a long time after that. So many years, I had dreamed of him coming back, seeing me, finally understanding. And now that he had, I felt nothing that fit neatly into words. But maybe that was okay. Maybe healing did not always look like hugs and happy endings. Sometimes, it just looked like standing tall, while the past finally stopped towering over you. It was the biggest stage yet. A tech expo in San Francisco. Thousands in the audience. Cameras. Spotlights. Screens as tall as buildings. My name on banners, alongside words like visionary, breakout developer, the voice of a generation. I stood backstage, heart thumping. The host was already introducing me. And now, the creator of Threadlight, a game that redefined what storytelling and gaming could be. Jacob Miller. The applause was thunderous. Not polite. Not cautious. This time, they knew my name. I stepped onto the stage. The lights hit my face like a sunbeam. I looked out and froze. Front row. Mr. Rankin. He had flown out. His eyes were wet. Next to him, Jessica, holding a press badge, looking down. Not smug. Just still. 2 seats to the right, my mother, clutching her purse like it might break. She looked older, smaller, but she was here. And beside her, an empty chair, reserved, for someone who would never sit in it again. I took a breath. I had a speech prepared. Months of writing, editing, rehearsing. But I folded the paper, slipped it into my pocket. I looked out at the sea of faces, former skeptics, fans, friends, strangers. And I said nothing. Not a word. Just stood there. Still. Calm. Rooted. And in that silence, something shifted. The crowd quieted. No one coughed. No one whispered. They just watched. I held that silence like a sword, because in that moment, I did not need to speak, not to explain, not to prove, not to fight. Everything I needed to say had already been said, in the work, in the journey, in the scars turned into story. And now? Now I just stood tall. Because sometimes, the loudest message is a man who was once called worthless, now standing in front of the world, without saying a single word.